Hello and welcome. You're watching Eye on Africa and I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Our top stories. Northern Nigeria in the dark. A major blackout cripples various states and President Tinubu is to send troops after gunmen vandalized a major transmission line. UN Secretary General warns the 18-month war in Sudan could ignite regional instability from the Sahel to the Horn of Africa to the Red Sea. We'll talk to the US State Department's Special Envoy for Sudan. Building a bridge over troubled waters. French President Emmanuel Macron gets a standing ovation at the Moroccan Parliament during a state visit after confirming France's decision to back Morocco on Western Sahara. Northern Nigeria has been plunged into darkness for nearly 2 weeks. Engineers have been unable to carry out repairs following insecurity. The transmission company of Nigeria says gunmen are occupying the area where the line is damaged. The power supply is crippled in 19 of Nigeria's 36 states, depriving millions of electricity and paralysing economic activity. There are now plans to deploy troops to the affected areas. Sam Olukoya reports from Lagos.
The blackout was caused following damage to a major transmission line. 17 of Nigeria's 36 states have been facing blackouts for more than a week. The affected 17 states make up 19 of Nigeria's northern states. Emotions are running high in the region as the blackout persists. The blackout is one of the worst Nigeria has experienced in terms of duration and the landmass affected. The damaged power transmission line is in an area occupied by armed groups. The Nigerian government says engineers cannot go to the area for repair works because it is unsafe for them to do so. President Bola Tinubu has ordered the deployment of the Army and the Air Force to the area to provide security for engineers to carry out repairs. Jihadist groups like Boko Haram and many other armed groups operate in many parts of Nigeria. Many of these armed groups operate in Niger State, where the damaged power line is located. The inability of engineers to fix the power line due to insecurity shows Nigeria's worsening security crisis. The situation also highlights the growing capacity of armed groups to disrupt economic life in Nigeria.
The conflict in Sudan could pose a threat to the regional stability from the Sahel to the Horn of Africa to the Red Sea. This is the latest warning from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He says the Sudanese people are living through unspeakable atrocities and 750,000 are facing catastrophic food insecurity and famine conditions in North Darfur displacement sites. Our Washington correspondent Fraser Jackson spoke to the US State Department's Special Envoy for Sudan, Tom Perriello. He started by asking him what more the international community could do to ease the suffering of the Sudanese people.
Well, the international community remains united but needs to be more intense in its demands for absolute access to food and medicine for Sudanese people in all 18 states. That's north, south, east, and west. You have tens of millions of Sudanese that are facing starvation. Not only does that mean death, disease, and cholera, but it means people subjected to horrific kinds of exploitation, sexual slavery, and other kinds of abuses. The international community must demand an end to this, full humanitarian access by both the SAF and the RSF. In addition to that, we need to raise the costs on those that are conducting these horrific abuses. The United States, under the Biden administration, has led the way with sanctions of both individuals and companies that are behind these horrific atrocities. We've helped lead under Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield's leadership the extension of the Darfur arms embargo. We need to give that the teeth of enforcement, which looks like it's moving forward at the United Nations now. We cannot let these abuses stand.
Well, speaking of the UN, recently Antonio Guterres said at present the conditions do not exist for a successful deployment of a UN force to protect civilians in Sudan. Does the US believe a UN-led force on the ground is needed to stop the violence?
Well, so many things are needed. The question is, what can we do right now? And right now we're focused on working with our African counterparts and Gulf counterparts to find a ceasefire for the whole country, but also looking at local pauses, humanitarian pauses that can allow safe access to markets and to water. When you have something like a cholera epidemic, it's directly tied to access to drinkable water. So in each one of these communities, we're talking about families, mothers facing horrific choices. We, along with the United Nations and the African Union, need to be demanding action on this for that humanitarian access and a pause to the violence.
But does the US believe that a UN force is the only way to stop the violence?
It's not. This is a war of choice. This is a famine of choice. This was not a famine that was created by a tsunami or a disease or a drought. It was two men, Hameti and Burhan, that decided to go to war. First, they joined forces to overthrow the civilian transition that the Sudanese people had so clearly demanded in 2019, and then having this fight for power and control over the country. The only path forward is to restore that civilian transition, the aspirations of the Sudanese people. This was a war of choice. It can be a peace of choice, and we need those leaders to choose the path of peace.
The seasonal rains have ended in Sudan now. Is the US bracing for the fighting to get worse over the coming months?
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that as the rains recede, we get food and medicine pouring in with the same intensity we saw with the rains. We've made some progress in terms of access points from the east on the Daba Road, down through the south in Sinnar, and the west through the Adre border crossing. We need the government to extend that border access today. They need to allow the kind of humanitarian flights into area like Kadugli and Dongolo. We've been trying to land humanitarian flights for almost 3 months. Those are entire communities in places like Kadugli that do not have access because the army and its body, the HAC, have prevented those flights from moving. We need that flight access now, that border access now. As those rains have receded, we should be able to get to more of the millions of Sudanese that are facing that kind of starvation and isolation at the same time that we look for ways to decrease the violence itself.
And finally, the US has given over $2 billion worth of aid to Sudan since April 2023. There's no getting away from the fact that there is a US election in around a week's time from now. What does the political uncertainty in the United States look like in terms of aid and the future of aid in Sudan?
The United States' commitment to the people of Sudan is very clear, and it is very bipartisan. There is tremendous support from both Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, along with the Biden administration and previous administrations. That's why we've led the way on humanitarian aid. It's why we've led the way on sanctioning those individuals and companies that are doing horrible things to the Sudanese people. That commitment to the Sudanese people and its future remains very strong regardless of our election outcome. The key is for the Sudanese to one day soon have the same opportunity to vote for their future leaders that I had the opportunity to exercise this weekend in my hometown. We look forward to that as the future for Sudan, but first we have to end this war.
And now to the DRC. Fighting has erupted in North Kivu province in recent days, threatening to put an end to the ceasefire. M23 rebels have taken control of significant areas in eastern DRC, including the town of Kalembe last Wednesday, violating the truce between Congolese and Rwandan armies agreed in August. Emmett Livingston in Kinshasa has more.
Over the past several days, M23 rebels have battled other militias and captured territory, notably in the Walikale area of North Kivu province. Last week, the Congolese army also said that it had saved the village of Kalembe from the rebels, indicating that state forces have also taken part in the fighting. But the M23 has since captured Kalembe, according to local sources. It's also reportedly taken other villages in Walikale. The M23 rebels, who are supported by Rwandan troops, launched an offensive in late 2021 and captured a chunk of North Kivu. They've also displaced over 1 million people and surrounded the city of Goma. Since the regional mediator Angola decreed a ceasefire in August, the front lines have been mostly calm, but with the latest clashes, the ceasefire appears to be nearing collapse. There was some hope earlier this month when DR Congo and Rwanda agreed to the outline of a peace plan which would involve the Congolese authorities tackling the ethnic Hutu FDLR militia in exchange for Rwanda removing troops from Congolese territory. Diplomats had hoped that the ceasefire would hold for long enough to make progress in the ongoing peace talks, which are also brokered by Angola. Technical experts from DR Congo and Rwanda are due to meet on Wednesday to continue these talks, but the outbreak of fighting complicates an already difficult task.
While the transitional government in Guinea has yet to announce a date for election, authorities have dissolved dozens of political parties and placed 2 major opposition ones under observation. The government says the shake-up aims at cleaning up, it says, the political chessboard. Among the parties that will be under observation for 3 months, the Rally of the Guinean People, which is the party of former President Alpha Condé, and another major opposition party, the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea. And now to Botswana, which is set to go to the polls on Wednesday in a national election that will decide if the ruling party extends a 58-year stretch in power. President Mokgweetsi Masisi of the ruling Botswana Democratic Party is seeking a second and final term in office. Voters will decide the makeup of parliament, and lawmakers will later elect the president. The BDP has dominated Botswanan politics since 1966, and some voters are ready for change.
Tomorrow is the time whereby people should go and cast the ballot so that they can have the government that needs to be ruling them.
BDP has been running our country for a long time. It's high time we change.
There's been a lot of drama around, but let's hope it will be fine. Let's hope our president will be back again.
French president received a standing ovation in the Moroccan parliament when Emmanuel Macron confirmed France's stance on Western Sahara, backing Morocco's position. King Mohammed VI has been welcoming the French leader to his country on a state visit, which has seen the signing of a series of bilateral agreements. Morocco has historically been a key economic and security partner. However, relations between the two countries have often been fragile.
It's a topic that looms large over French President Emmanuel Macron's state visit to Morocco. The Western Sahara has been fought over by Morocco and Algeria for nearly 50 years. The former Spanish colony is controlled for the most part by Morocco, but the Algerian-backed Polisario Front also lays claim to the territory. It's an independence movement representing the region's indigenous Sahrawi ethnic group. The United Nations says the Western Sahara is a non-self-governing territory over which Morocco cannot claim sovereignty. And last summer, France, one of the main former colonial powers in the region, shifted its position on the conflict. In a letter to the Moroccan king, President Emmanuel Macron threw his support behind Rabat's plan for control of the territory.
I consider the present and future of the Western Sahara to be part of Moroccan sovereignty. Morocco's autonomy plan for the Western Sahara is the only basis for achieving a just, lasting, and negotiated political solution in accordance with the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council.
Paris then followed in the footsteps of Washington, Berlin, and Madrid to back Morocco's plan. The move eased tensions between President Macron and King Mohammed VI, tensions that had reached fever pitch in July 2021 following revelations that Moroccan services were using the Israeli spy software Pegasus to monitor the phones of senior French officials, including President Macron. Paris's continued reconciliation with Morocco also risks derailing re-established relations between France and Algeria.
President Macron has also made a big effort over recent years to try and improve relations with Algeria. But then with this decision now to not completely accept it, but come very close to the Moroccan stance on the Western Sahara, that has brought a halt to the rapprochement that was underway with Algeria.
In the immediate aftermath of Paris's decision, Algeria withdrew its ambassador from Paris and canceled President Tebboun's planned state visit to France at the time.
And this concludes our edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more news.
In the United States, first and second generation immigrants have historically voted for the Democratic Party. However, more and more are joining the ranks of Donald Trump's Republicans.
The Republican Party, they don't make race an object. I think that there are a lot of diverse people inside of that party that focus more on the value that they add and what they provide to society.
These conservative and often religious values are seen by voters as a bastion against communist ideology.
I grew up in a country that was destroyed by socialism.
From Miami to Houston, we explore the growing Republican vote among immigrants. Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.